Welcome to Go Bucks. We are only a couple days away from the national title game between Notre Dame and Ohio State, and a lot of themes are starting to come out of that. Getting excited to see Jeremiah Smith finally go off on man coverage. But in any case, I think that we are really going to see maybe some fireworks probably from the Buckeyes. But I think just based on the title of this episode too, I think there is a pathway for Notre Dame to possibly win this game. I'll get your guys' thoughts on that, and I'm sure you could probably think of some pathways too. But in any case, before we get to that, how are you guys doing? Matt, Brian?
Man, I can't wait any longer. This wait is just absolutely killing me. It's just brutal. I need my football now. But on the other side of that, I am also very annoyed that we're not going to have any more college football for several months afterwards. So that's the downside, of course, because man, I really like this playoff has just been fantastic. Just having games every week or whatever. It's just been a lot of fun, especially. They added more teams this year, and Michigan still couldn't make it in. I mean, it's just I heard like before the season starts, everyone was saying like, we're going to run it back. I know we lost a lot of players, but we have 4 first-rounders coming back, and this defense is going to carry us. And Alex Orji is, going to be like basically, Deshaun Watson or something, and he's probably going to win the Heisman.
Cam Newton
running the ball. Cam Newton.
He was Cam Newton.
Yeah, and then they had your running back on the cover of NCAA football, and he only had like 400 yards or something this year. That was like the most ridiculous pick.
1.4 yards a carry, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine to put Ewers and Travis Hunter on there, of course, but man, the Michigan running back was a little weird. And like I didn't have a problem with the Michigan guy on there because they won the title, but there was at least 3 or 4 other guys they could have used, like the guys that are on defense that are actually good.
Not surprisingly, this all went back to Michigan. You guys are in the national title game. Who gives a shit about
Notre Dame? Who gives a shit about Michigan? I sure as shit don't. I don't even care about talking about Michigan right now. Who gives a shit? Like this is all about Ohio State. And I mean, the only thing that I was going to ask you, Nate, is how were you feeling this time last year when you guys were facing Washington? Once you'd gotten through Alabama,
if you guys
were facing Washington, going into that game, what was your confidence level like?
I was worried because of that offense that Washington had and the way they treated Texas and the way they treated Oregon. And like the quarterback was awesome. They had 3 wide receivers that were like insane too. I mean, I was really scared for Michigan that they just hadn't faced anyone. Granted, they faced Ohio State, who has really good wide receivers, but I mean, you're thinking about what was the guy's name? Started with a P. The quarterback for Washington. Penix.
Oh, Penix.
He was a lot better than McCord. I mean, going up against McCord versus Penix was like, okay, well, we haven't really seen anything like that. And if I remember right, it was probably pretty split at the time before that game, everywhere where people thought Michigan versus Washington, who was going to win. So I was worried.
I don't know. I think the spread was I can't remember what the spread was in that game, but it was more than the touchdown. It had to have been like that. The problem was that Penix and those wide receivers didn't play defense. Washington's defense was suspect. And what's really wild about this year is how it seems like we've seen a resurgence of defense wins championships. Now, that really has been the mantra of all the teams that have won these playoff games have typically been the better defenses won it. And which is obviously carried Notre Dame in this game, but it just seems like it's one of those games going into it that basically the writing is on the wall that Notre Dame has to play a perfect game to win this game. It has to fall exactly how they want it to, and it's it could be one of those games like it was last year where the game was over relatively early because Michigan controlled the line of scrimmage, and so it was that was a non-competitive game pretty early on because of that. So it'll be I don't know, it'll be interesting to see, man. I am anxious because I think, like you said, there is a pathway for Notre Dame to win this game. I don't think there's any question about that, and just the way that their defense is suffocating. I think it's the second best defense in the entire tournament. So these are the 2 best defenses in the entire tournament are there. So hang on, I'm going to change my screen real quick.
Oh no, and you're absolutely right. And by the way, just I looked it up. The spread last year between Michigan and Washington was just -5. So everyone thought it was
Wow.
going to be a lot closer than it actually was. But
Yeah, the interesting thing, Nate, about last year's game was so much about football is matchups, right? And I mean, in the Washington Texas game, to me, like that whole game, I felt like Texas was the better team, but Penix kept making throw after throw where there was a guy in his face and he was threading it in and making just miracle passes to even
yeah,
keep that game close. So that, I mean, that was very, like, he had to pull out all the stops and absolutely play the perfect game to win that game. And then also, I think he got pretty banged up in that game against Texas. And then, like, for instance, the Texas versus Michigan would have been a really tough matchup for you guys, right? Because so Texas's offense
sure,
wasn't
yeah.
quite as good, but they had a good offense, whereas the Texas defense, they had those big studs on the defensive line, and your offense was basically just running the ball. So that would have been a really interesting matchup to see if Michigan would have been able to run it all on Texas last year.
Would have been interesting. I
And
mean, a
and then
totally
and
different
then
team.
Styles make fights.
yeah, and then to Brian's point about
Styles make
defenses,
fights.
I was, watching a lot of different podcasts, and people have their power rankings and their spreads for what they think this game is going to be, and how accurate their models have been throughout the playoffs. And while a lot of them have said that their models have been relatively accurate, they said that the one thing that's been even more accurate than the models is whoever has the better defense is winning. And that's like the one consistent thing throughout the playoffs is the top defenses are winning the games.
Yeah, shout
Yeah.
out to was the College Football Nerds. They do a great
Yeah.
job. Their model's one of the ones that's been saying that, and it's and that gives you a chance. I mean, if you can hold, to me, this game really is like a race to 24 points. Like I felt like the game against Texas was really a race to 30. Didn't quite turn out that way, but it certainly could have if that game went to overtime. And that it that's the pathway. I just don't know if Notre Dame, without help against this defense on their own, can score 24 points. Because I don't see them holding Ohio State below 24, 21. You're going to have to win the game 24-21 if Notre Dame is going to win this. I just cannot see them holding them down that way. But, both teams played arguably their worst games in the playoffs last week. So, you have, it's
Probably.
not as though you've got these guys peaking at, I mean, they found gritty ways to win games, but both, I think, I don't know that I ever felt like Texas was going to win that game against Ohio State, but they certainly made it closer than it should have been. And I did feel like Penn State should have won that game. I mean, if not for Drew Aller really making some horrific mistakes at the end of that game, Penn State did everything they needed to. They ran the ball for 200 yards and lost. They did enough to stop. They had a couple of the blown assignment on the explosive pass play that kind of skewed the passing numbers for Notre Dame. Otherwise, they did a good job, containing Riley Leonard. Leonard and Love did a good job. I will say they did an excellent job of running in the red zone and with individual effort. I mean, that run that Love had with a bad knee, running over like 5 guys, scoring that touchdown was unbelievable.
That was incredible.
So
Yeah.
it was awesome. But they're down their left tackles not playing. I mean, they're starting a redshirt freshman who's had, I think this is his second start in his career against probably JT Tuimoloau, who's playing a high level. If it, he showed in the second half of the Texas game, even with the ankle injury, that he's dominant. He's a dominant run defender for sure. And with Sawyer and him and the way that the defensive line's playing right now, I just have a hard time seeing, if Notre Dame can't run for 100 yards in this game, what are they going to do? Do you think Riley Leonard's capable of throwing 300 yards and 3 touchdowns? Because that's what it's going to take.
Well, I'll tell you what I think their pathway is like our defense has been really good, but they're not perfect. They've given up plays to the tight end sometimes, not against Penn State, but against other tight ends. Like the Texas tight end made a couple plays, not that many, but Sonny Styles either is really good or really bad. Either he makes some big plays, like he had that big hit on the tight end where he dropped it, and they were trying to. The coach, Sarkisian, was trying to get a targeting on that. And I think the other thing that sort of goes unnoticed is so many of our bowl games that we played in the past, including this year, have been in enemy territory. Like, we're playing Georgia in the Georgia Dome. I mean, it's just completely in Atlanta. So it's not fair. And then, so this was in Texas. So you tell me if this is home cooking when, the clock operator just lets it go all the way down and, basically waiting and hoping that someone will take a look at that for a targeting call. I mean, it was an obvious home field advantage there, just as an example on that.
Someone in Jerry world.
It was silly.
So,
and that's
Notre Dame plays.
Officials. I just don't even want to hear that, because it's like that had nothing to do with Travion Henderson getting a stupid penalty. Yep. A couple of holding penalties, a couple of mental mistakes, a false start there in 2nd and 20, 3 drives in a row, 4 drives in a row. That wasn't the officials doing that. And, Texas is a good offense with a good head coach that's one of the better offensive minds in college football. They're going to score some points. And Ohio State really held them to 14, could have been at worst 21, and to me, that's championship level defense. Like they played a game. They just can't self-destruct. We've talked about that before on previous shows. Like the only team that can beat Ohio State is Ohio State. Like, they play clean in this game. If they don't have turnovers, they don't have a bunch of penalties to put them behind the chains. I don't care how good Notre Dame is. They can stay more balanced than Notre Dame can, because if you force them to throw, they've shown Ohio State can throw. I don't think Notre Dame has done that. And you can look at the numbers in the Penn State game, but that was heavily skewed by one explosive play where the corner fell down and the safety took a bad angle. Like, I don't expect that to happen to Ohio State. And this is strength on strength as far as like the stats want to show, because Notre Dame's, if not the best rushing team in the playoffs, one of them, and they're going against the number 1 rush defense in the country. I mean, Ohio State stuffed everybody's running attack in the playoffs. No one's run against them.
That's true.
That's the tail. To me, that's the tail of the game, because, even in the Texas game, as poor as they played offensively, I mean, that's the most imbalanced they've been. Because in the first 2 games against Oregon and Tennessee, they were extremely balanced and they ran the football. And if Ohio State runs the ball in this game, it's game over, because they know they can throw, and that opens up the play action passing. That opens up, their ability to do all the misdirection stuff. So Texas did a good job of stopping the run. Really, if not for that explosive screen pass in the first half, who knows how that game turns out. But that's what Ohio State can do to you, because they've got explosive weapons at receiver and in the backfield. So, and even Howard, if not for the turf monster getting him, probably runs in that touchdown on the read. So
yeah,
they are.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah, but I mean,
and then he also kept that ball at one time where Judkins could have had at least 40.
Yeah, that was a bad read.
That happens.
But I will say, I think overall Howard has done a great job.
He's been fantastic
of reading the game, and that's the difference. Like, if Penn State had competent quarterback play, not even elite level, just competent quarterback play, they are in this game, not Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Hey, before I want to ask you guys about Notre Dame's strategy for defending Jeremiah Smith, but real quick, game break. Wanted to tell everyone, please subscribe to MGO Bucks. We greatly appreciate it. Please share with your friends. And we are definitely going to have some more videos coming up even after the national title game. There's a lot to talk about. Apparently Jim Knowles is having some thoughts about going to maybe Oklahoma. We'll talk about that maybe later on in the week. But in any case, please subscribe. Greatly appreciate that. But so back to my question. So defending Jeremiah Smith, there's been kind of a theme talking about how Notre Dame plays man ball. And if they're going to do that against Jeremiah Smith, I think one of the players, I can't remember which one, came out and actually said, hey, we're going to play our defense. Yeah. He said, we're going to play our defense. We're going to play man on man. Are you guys buying that? I believe they have the capability to be multiple back there. They're a good defense, but what do you guys make of that?
That's fake news. It is. There's no way they're going to do that. I mean, it's possible they might try it. I mean, they're going to play man some. It's not that they're not going to play it, but normally they play 65, 70% man, which is the highest in the country. So it's not that, they're going to still do man. It's just, they're going to be changing it up.
Do you want to rephrase that? That they're going to do man? Good Lord. That's my 12-year-old self.
You know, one thing that helps, I think one thing that helps Ohio State is they played this team recently, and they played them when they had Marvin Harrison Jr. And they had a game plan for taking Harrison Jr. out of the game, and Egbuka. So there were times when they were double teaming both of them. There were times when they put him in man. There were times when they, you know, pressured. There were times when they didn't. The difference to me now is that Will Howard is a humongous upgrade over Kyle McCord. But Kyle McCord did not play well in that game. I mean, he had to drive at the end, but he was not good in the game against Notre Dame. Will Howard is exponentially better, and as long as he plays even close to the way he's been playing in the playoffs, I think Ohio State's going to be fine in the pass game. You know, I'm sure that Notre Dame is going to pressure them. They're going to mix coverages. They're going to do a lot of things, but I don't see how you can go into a game plan against this team and not number one on your to-do list is limit the explosive plays. You know, I love the fact that they're like, hey, this is what we do. This is what got us here. We're going out. You know, we're not going to be conservative. We're going to come out and play an aggressive game plan and try to lead with our defense. I love it. I would do the same thing if I were them, and if I were a Notre Dame fan, that's what I would want. But you can't be stupid. So, you know, you have to be selective in how you do it, and you have to get lucky to some degree. And I think they're going to have to do the same thing on offense too. I think they're going to have to do a little bit of what Oregon did to Ohio State in the first game, you know, where they didn't expect Oregon to throw the ball deep down the field, and they took shots and they hit them. And I think, you know, Notre Dame's going to have to throw some haymakers in this game. And they're going to have to connect on a few. So there are going to be times when it's cover 0 or cover 1. And, you know, you're just going to have to trust your guys to hold up against these receivers and try to get pressure on Howard and try to force him to you know, make a bad decision or put a ball in a bad place. It's not like Howard hasn't shown he will turn the ball over. He will, or he can. So, you know, even in the Texas game, they got him with one. It's just, you know.
Plus he fumbled once too.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that they're not perfect by any means, but I don't think you can live and die in that because, you know, Ohio State does have so many man-beating concepts and really good receivers. And the one thing that has to scare you a little bit if you're the defensive coordinator for Notre Dame is that Texas basically made it so that they had to have Carnell Tate beat them, and Carnell Tate beat them. You know, so when he had to, or G. Scott beat him when he had to, that third down that made the fourth down manageable on that last drive. I mean, they've got guys, the screen pass to Henderson, you know, and if nothing else, if you're going to play deep coverage, you know, or drop, and you play with a light box, then Quinshon Judkins has shown that they'll run the ball. They just got to run the ball better than they did against Texas. So, but really, a lot of that was that whole first half. It was like 7 drives where they had some kind of negative play that short-circuited their own drives.
That's what
something crazy like that.
I think we need to also be more specific on the run game, like being better. I think it's just like you said. I mean, so there has to be less mistakes so you can have longer drives where I mean, it was more of a lack of opportunity to run the ball than a run game was shut down because. I mean, Quinshon had 4 yards of carry and Henderson had 7. They were both running fine, and Quinshon had probably the block of the game, like knocking somebody out when he was blocking for Travion on one of the runs. He's so
nasty when they put them both in the game together, and that's the thing too that the Ohio State can manipulate you with personnel groups. You know, they're in 21 with both tailbacks in there. They're in 12. They're in 11. They're in. You know, they can do different things, and I do expect them to move Smith around more.
That's what I was going to ask.
I was a little bit disappointed.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you about, Brian. So in the first 2 games, I mean, for someone who, you know, I watch a lot of the football, but I don't know the schemes as well as you do. And just from watching Ohio State, I know that we don't normally move our players around nearly as much as they were doing with Smith in those first 2 games.
Yeah.
It just seemed like, you know, even on that 4-yard catch where he just took it 70 yards and ran through 2 people. I mean, there was just nobody on him because they just motioned him. No one went with him. And
it's a package play. So that
they find ways to get him open, to get him the ball.
Yeah, they've gotten a couple things that have been interesting. Like one is that particular play, they've run it, I don't know, at least 4 times I know about. I didn't see it specifically in the Texas game. I'm sure they ran it. I just don't remember seeing it. But it's a package play where depending on what the look is pre-snap, they can either give it or he can throw that underneath route to the crosser, but it works. It works best if you get some kind of man variation or some kind of match coverage, and it doesn't work as well if they're just going to play deep zone, because if you've ever seen teams that, you'll see this a lot in high school games where like you'll have an offense that motions all the time, but if the team is literally playing zone the entire game, it's kind of pointless because they're not really adjusting to it. So you're trying to get them to either give you some kind of indication of what the coverage is or leverage a particular defender. And I think Texas just did a good job of basically daring them to run against a 6-man box and taking the short stuff away and then trying to come up and tackle. If I don't think that's in Notre Dame's DNA. Like, they want to be up closer to the line of scrimmage. And so the rub routes, the misdirection stuff, I think that opens you up to potentially use that. I also think that they were, for whatever reason, they were getting a lot of cover 3 or cover 3 variations. So there's a single high safety, and clearly when they get cover 3, they've been shredding cover 3, shredding it all playoffs long. I mean, if you think about the double move, they hit Oregon with a double move from Smith from the slot. They tried that against Texas and almost hit it. And then Texas went away from that. They didn't stay in a single high anymore. So it's those motions are basically to get some kind of a mismatch or some kind of leverage. And for whatever reason, they just didn't feel like it was going to work against Texas, or they abandoned it because of the coverages that they were getting from Texas. But I think you're going to see more of it in this game. I don't think they're going to go back to that type of game plan. I think you're going to see stuff that's more like the Tennessee and Oregon game plan, where they're trying to misdirect and then run counter and power off of it, because they were trying to run some zone schemes, some duo, some other things inside against Texas, and it wasn't working. So I don't know if they thought that they could just, against that lighter box, start to run more zone schemes, but this is not a zone blocking team as it's currently constructed. Yeah. So they've got to give help to this offensive line.
Cerebral was
what
also
happens when Ohio State running game and Penn State running game, which is better? Because I know, Penn State ran for over 200 yards on Notre Dame. But
it's a great question, Nate. It's a great question. And I will say this, because I saw Penn State play live in the Big Ten championship game, and then I watched them every game of the playoffs. And I will say, I will die on this hill to say that as far as run blocking, the best run blocking offensive line in the entire playoffs was Penn State. When they decided to run, no one was stopping them. Why they didn't just run it 40 times, I have no idea. It should have been the Michigan game plan.
I was screaming
that offensive line, and they would have been in the title game. They just got cute. They're dominant on their line. They were moving the line of scrimmage, and I do think it hurts Notre Dame to have that defensive tackle, out for the rest of the playoffs, who's arguably their best defensive lineman. They're undersized, and they make up for it by being aggressively attacking the gaps downhill with their linebackers and safeties. But that opens you up to play action too. And that was the one thing with Penn State has no wide receivers. That their only passing attack is to the running backs and the tight ends. If you've got competent receivers, you can get plays. I mean, Georgia, how many big drops did they have in that game?
There was wide open receivers running against Notre Dame, and they could not catch. It was just, basically just.
And a first-time starting quarterback.
Yeah.
Georgia had a first-time starting quarterback and no running game, and still got plays in the pass game if their wide receivers could have caught the ball. Probably win that game.
I'm wondering also how bad the defenses were in the SEC if Georgia had the number 12 offense in the country. How is that possible? Because that does not look like a good offense. Yeah. They don't have a good running game.
No, they weren't.
Beck has had games where he's thrown for a lot, but he has a ton of interceptions on the year. Very inconsistent, hit or miss, kind of like Jalen Milroe. They're both, boom or bust. But I wanted to say
I think Georgia's O-line was not good this year.
Yeah, especially their left tackle.
They couldn't run the ball consistently. I think Carson Beck had to do a lot because of their inability to run the football, and their defense was not elite. I mean, I think the best defense that Notre Dame's played so far, maybe all year, but in the tournament, was Penn State. And I don't think Penn State's defense is as good as Ohio State's defense. But I do think Penn State's offensive line is better than Ohio State's. So that's, that, but still, I mean, Penn State ran for 200 yards. They ran Adam. I mean, how many running did they get? All three rushing touchdowns. All three touchdowns were rushing touchdowns. Singleton had a day
Yeah, a
against
lot of it
them.
happened in the first half.
Yeah.
And
it's crazy.
And then they just kind of went away from it for some reason. It's mind-boggling.
It is. I mean, but it does tell you that it's not a good sign if you're losing the line of scrimmage. And at best, I think it's a stalemate, Notre Dame's front against Ohio State's offensive line. So if they can use misdirections and things to get some advantages, and really, I thought Ohio State did a decent job of controlling the line of scrimmage in the game against Texas. They just had the mistakes. So, if they don't play with composure and they have mistakes, then that opens the door potentially for Notre Dame to muddy the game up, make it ugly, keep it close. And that's where a special teams play or a big turnover can get it close. But that's the only way that I see Notre Dame being able to do it, is the way that they did it against, Georgia.
Okay.
Georgia, they had a bad turnover, in their own end at the end of the half, scored off of it, then had the punt return for a touchdown. It was basically a 14-point swing. That's really the only reason that Notre Dame wins that game.
And so that's actually another good comparison between what Ohio State's bad at and what Notre Dame is good at. In a lot of our games, even though we started off fast and dominated against Tennessee, we started off fast and dominated against Oregon. We got a score on the first drive against Texas and almost a score on the second drive, which was just stopped because Henderson punched a guy. But other than that, we've had fast starts, but what we've been bad at, and I think every single game, was we give up a touchdown at the end of the half every single time. Obviously it doesn't matter as much against Tennessee and Oregon because we were blowing them out, but we still give up scores right at the end of the half, and then against Texas too. That was a hugely deflating, missed tackle by Burke and giving up that touchdown with 30 seconds left in the first half. And had Henderson not pulled that screen out of his ass, I don't know, we might have lost that game. So I mean, that was
total momentum change. Complete momentum swing. That's what I thought. Really, the biggest difference to me in the first two games versus Texas is Ohio State couldn't get the 2-score lead.
Yeah,
they were always like, Texas was having to claw back and work their asses off just to get back in the game. They could never get control of the game, but Ohio State just couldn't put the distance on them they needed, and they did that in the first two games.
And what's Notre Dame going to do if they get down 3 scores? Yeah,
it's over. I mean, I think if it gets to be a 2-score lead for any length of time, that game is over.
Oh yeah, it's for sure.
And so that's where Notre Dame's just got to keep it close.
So I thought I've been picking against Notre Dame literally the entire playoff bracket. Like, I thought they're going to lose to Indiana, I thought they were going to lose to Georgia, and I thought they were going to lose to Penn State. Literally, I thought we all picked
Notre Dame.
We all picked Notre Dame. I don't remember. I didn't. I don't know if I picked them, but in my mind, I never thought they were going to win those games. Especially, I especially against Georgia and especially against Penn State, I thought it was over. So, what does it say that they've continued to win that?
Because of James Franklin?
Yeah.
We picked
you know what? I think you're right. I may have picked Notre Dame.
Smartly.
No, I think you're right, because after they beat Georgia and Indiana, I started thinking, okay, there's no way James Franklin's going to win this game. But it's like, what does it say that they've kept beating these teams? I mean, I know that we picked them, but
Marcus Freeman, man.
Yeah.
Marcus Freeman's done a hell of a job.
That's one reason I don't hate Notre Dame right now. If Brian Kelly was at Notre Dame, I would be wearing a Buckeye t-shirt with you guys right now.
Yeah.
But Freeman is
Marcus Freeman took over a program that supposedly they didn't have the talent to win a championship, and here they are.
Yeah, so Brian Kelly is such a dirty liar. He's already phony. Like, he left Notre Dame. He said, Notre Dame doesn't have the resources to win a national title. So he goes to LSU, and he's making these cheesy videos. And then he had that, when he was announced as the head coach, he had the fake accent, the fake Southern accent. And he's just a complete phony. And then he comes out and he was taking credit. He's like pretending to say he was, happy for the Notre Dame players because he was pretending like he recruited all of them. And there's only a handful of people on the roster that's starting that he recruited. And, he's saying, oh, yeah, I mean, Notre Dame has always had, the ability to win a national title. So he's just lying through his teeth. But anyway, to get back to our main point, I never really gave like my main main theory of how Notre Dame can win. And so part of it's going to have to come down to, so the guy who's starting at left tackle, allegedly, if we believe them, is the guy who was supposed to be the starter at left tackle at the beginning of the year, and he tore his pec muscle and was out all year. I don't know how long he's been back, but I don't think is this his first game back, or has he been playing a different position? I'm not sure. But he's going to be, they're starting left tackle. But
yeah, I thought that was the guard. Thought that was the guard, because the left tackle's a redshirt freshman who's only his second start. They said that.
No, the left tackle was out he's the guy that got hurt last week.
No, the starting left tackle's out. The guy who's playing left tackle today or Monday is a kid who was he's only had 2 starts. The guy who had the pec muscle, I thought, was an interior offensive lineman. I thought that was a right guard, but I could be wrong.
Is he? But someone who was supposed to be the starter. I thought that the person who was supposed to be the starter at left tackle at the beginning of the year is now.
I could be wrong on that, but the point was that the guy who's playing has only had 2 starts.
Yeah. So the bottom line, it's not even just the starts. Just so much of offensive line is continuity, and you want to be able to have. I mean, look, the Ohio State actually is. We've rotated a lot, so it took us a long time to finally get into a groove after losing our left tackle, and then after losing our center. Like, everyone's like, oh, well, you just got to play the defense like Nebraska did. I mean, well, Nebraska, that game was, sort of like that, because we're just trying to replace a new offensive lineman. We haven't really figured it out yet. And then, Michigan is just, who knows, but we obviously have figured out what we're doing with our line now. And everyone, the people that don't really follow it closely, just think that Ohio State has a bad offensive line, and like pass protection, it's one of the best in the country. Like, I mean, prior to Texas, I think we'd only given up 13 sacks all year, which is a really good number. And I think they did give up 2 or 3 against Texas, but obviously Texas has an elite defense. But they did a really good job against Oregon and against Tennessee, who have great defensive lines. So that was super impressive. And I don't know how much of the run blocking is just that we had a bad scheme for our guys, or they're just not good at run blocking, or both. But for Notre Dame, I think that their path on defense is going to have to be some sort of run blitz to stop a running game. So just being very aggressive and just guessing right on when we're running versus passing. And then, like against Georgia, where their linebacker, that wasn't an accident that the Georgia running back had his first fumble of the year. I mean, he got destroyed. I mean, that was a big time play. There's a difference between, an unforced error and a forced fumble. That was a forced fumble. And, while Aller had a bad decision to pass across his body, I mean, it was still a great diving interception by the defender against Penn State. So they are really good at forcing turnovers. Will Howard will almost definitely have at least 1 turnover in the game. And he has had some really bad turnovers where, his interception is not just an interception. It's an interception that's ran back 40 yards. So he's had some really bad mistakes. Yeah, he's had some really bad mistakes in bad areas of the field. He usually does it once a game, sometimes twice a game, and we just get lucky that they don't take advantage of it the second time. So they're going to have to definitely take advantage of that. I'm interested to see how much they blitz him on 3rd down, because I think they do like to blitz flood, but obviously Will Howard is amazing against the blitz. So I don't know if they're going to do that in this game. And then on offense, so much of it's going to be how well is Jeremiah Love actually healed up. I mean, he still played pretty decent for being at 80% or whatever against Penn State, and he missed some of the game, but didn't have as many carries as normal, and really hasn't had an explosive run since that first early on against Indiana in the first playoff game. So 10 days off, maybe he's 100% and can actually have some explosive runs. And the guy is an athletic freak. He's just hurdling people like every game, and he's a playmaker in the passing game too. I think that's the one area. If I was Notre Dame, I would be targeting the running backs in the passing game. And the thing is, though, with Ohio State's defense, I don't think that we're going to be worried nearly as much about their receivers, and I would hope that we would be really focused on just their quarterback and running back running the ball, and then screens to the backs. Those are the main areas that I think that we should be concerned about, and the receivers are sort of a secondary issue. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, and Wanted to bring up Brian's comment here. Ohio State had the hardest path to the Natty over Notre Dame. That is true. Brian, I know you wanted to talk about this too, but that is true. And I think that Ohio State's had the hardest path to the Natty ever because of this 12-team playoff. But Notre Dame has had the second hardest path probably to the playoff. So kudos to both teams for being able to do this. So Notre Dame's not going to be just a rollover, I don't think.
Well, I think Oregon would have had the second hardest path. They had a pretty hard path too.
Well, no, I think there's no doubt that even though we got the 7 and the 8 seed playing for the title, both teams, whoever wins it, you can't say they don't deserve it. You can't say it because of the gauntlet that they had to run.
Yeah.
The fact that they had to start, with no bye, and so even though Notre Dame had Indiana to start, I mean Georgia and Penn State are good teams, and it's not that I don't know that there is a super team in college football this year, but I think the closest thing to it's Ohio State, but they underperformed through a lot of the season, and so they kind of deserved, in my mind, to have to run the gauntlet that they've run. But you can't take anything away from either one of them because no one's ever had to do this week in and week out. That's why I wasn't really surprised that Ohio State couldn't keep it going the way they did in the first two games of the playoff. That's almost impossible to play at that level the entire time when you're playing against better and better teams. And I do like, going into this matchup, I do like that Ohio State had to face what they had to against Texas because they did see that there were some weaknesses. Texas threw to the running backs a ton, missed tackles in the flats, the slant wheel combination for the first touchdown. They just happened to catch Ohio State in a zone blitz on the second touchdown to the back where you got a defensive tackle trying to cover the running back. That's not ideal. So, that I think they're going to be able to see some weaknesses structurally and fix and potentially at least have a Band-Aid for it. So an Aeneas Williams is not going to catch them by surprise when they see that, Notre Dame's not strong in the wide receiver, their wide receiver group. That's really running backs and tight ends. And so it's very, I'm not going to say it's similar to Texas because Texas did have some wide receivers. But it's at least like from I think it's a strategic standpoint, they went up against a really good opponent who's good at exploiting those kind of weaknesses. So I do think that helps them quite a bit. Whereas I don't know that Notre Dame, I'm not taking anything away from them. I think they got a tremendously talented, especially their secondary. They're very, very good defense. But I don't think they've been necessarily tested by any real passing attacks other than maybe USC, who put up a bunch of yards on them.
Yeah.
So
didn't they get like 600 yards or something and almost 40 points?
Yeah.
USC
threw for 350 and I think 3 touchdowns against them. I mean, had a couple picks too, and they obviously gave up 49. USC did, but that it shows. Like, I don't know how many potentially elite passing teams, and I don't know that Ohio State's necessarily an elite down in, down out passing team, but they're really, really good. And so, again, if Howard plays the way he did against Penn State or plays the way he did against Michigan, Notre Dame's absolutely got a chance. But you just can't. You have to understand the situation, play good situational football. Because I do think Notre Dame, even though you could argue they've potentially been outplayed for large portions of the games that they've played in the playoffs. They played outstanding situational football, outstanding. And that's one thing that you just cannot have situational mistakes. So if you are in your own end, you can't be making stupid throws like the out route, the underthrown out route in the Penn State game that went back to was a pick six, or the interception on your own end of the Michigan game and do the same damn thing. You can't do that in this game.
Or Will Howard running and fumbling the ball inside the 10. I mean,
and that's one thing That's one thing I would look for. If you were talking about what Notre Dame would do defensively. If I'm Notre Dame, the one thing that you almost have to do is you have to understand that Ohio State is a very, very big option team. So, I think when people hear that, they think like, oh, like wishbone teams or something like that. That's not the way the modern football is run. But even in the pass game, most of the passes are some type of read. So he's either got read option or he's got some kind of RPO. And so they're kind of built to take advantage of, like, if you blitz him, there's a reason that Will Howard's been so good against the blitz. If you pressure him, he's been outstanding. Ohio State's a really good team against man, that for a reason, because they have got built-in answers for what you're trying to do. The thing that I would try to do is I would try to, as much as possible, get Will Howard, give him the pull read so he's running the ball. I want him running the ball, not Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins. If you're going with a light box, you want to try to make Will Howard run it and then hit him. You got to hit him as hard as possible, and like kind of like what Michigan did. Come down and hit him and make him run the ball. And that's the thing with going up against Notre Dame's offense. I almost feel like the opposite. Like, I think the more dangerous runner in this game is Riley Leonard. And if Riley Leonard goes off, like, he's got to play his ass off in this game for Notre Dame to win, but he's really got to be an effective runner. Like, I'm talking like 75 to 100 yards and a touchdown or two in the run game. So how Ohio State decides to spy him, which I expect him to do, and still be able to cover the backs, that's going to be the interesting, kind of matchup for me on how Ohio State attacks that defense. Because if you remember, like, the way they tried to attack Dylan Gabriel and Oregon, at times they had JT spying him, and that didn't work. Like, you do not want to have your defensive end trying to spy this guy, because he is a really good open field runner. I think he's probably the best open field runner outside of the kid from Tennessee. He was a good runner, and he had some, some plays in that game. So, I don't think you're going to be able to completely stop the quarterback run for Notre Dame, but you have to contain it. You have to, because that's their biggest weapon.
Yeah, Notre Dame's one of those teams that's happy with 3 yards on first down on a run. So, and they'll be stubborn about it too.
Positive.
I mean, they'll be happy with that all day long, and that's kind of how they're going to sustain their drives, shorten the game. Very much a Michigan game plan, only with just more talent at wide receiver and quarterback, obviously. But hey, before we get in a little too far here, let's get into our picks for this game. Matt, what is? I think I know your pick, but I don't know your score.
Let's see. Well, I also wanted to say that before I get to my score, the one thing that I was a little bit worried about is we just have not really played a running quarterback. So outside of, I think, maybe what was it, Marshall? Like, they had like he's a bad quarterback. But he was actually a pretty good runner, and he actually gave us fits for about a half running the ball. I think we even gave up a couple scores to them. And I mean, granted, it's so hard to compare, first couple of weeks of the year with completely different defensive schemes, and plus you're just not into the game nearly as much when it's Marshall. But we have not, really played a legitimate running quarterback yet. I mean, Dylan Gabriel's a mobile quarterback, but he's not a running quarterback. Whereas Leonard, guy has like 850 yards rushing. Like, he's a real running quarterback. And, I think that Freeman's probably going to try to trick us with some, maybe some deep passes early just to try to open things up. Because I think that they're just going to assume that Notre Dame is just going to be running early. And I think they're going to try to be a little aggressive throwing early. But our defense has just been so lights out, but this is a different animal going against the running quarterback and an elite running back. So if the offensive line is actually healthy enough, it's going to be a real challenge to stop.
Hey, real quick before you get to your score, is Tennessee's quarterback, is he considered a running quarterback? I know he ran quite a bit and had some success.
Yes, he's both. He's definitely a dual threat guy. I mean, he's a very good runner, and he had some big time runs in the game against Ohio State. They just couldn't get anything in the pass game. And the other thing has been like, what Notre Dame player is Lathan Ransom going to knock out of this game?
That's what I keep saying. Notre Dame fans think I'm being an asshole, but I'm not saying it.
Well, you are, but
no, I know, but I'm not saying it as in like we're trying to injure people. I'm just stating a fact. There's been 3 games, and Ransom has knocked 3 people out of the game, basically. I mean, knocked the Oregon running back out of the game, knocked the Tennessee running back out of the game, and potentially Manning out of the game because he only had that one play and it looked like he was pretty wobbly there. So the guy, just him and Styles and like the whole defense, they're just hitting people so much harder than they have all year. I just don't see how. I mean, obviously those Notre Dame players are tough. I mean, they made it this far, but it's been a brutal stretch. I don't know. I mean, you're not going to give up in the national title game, but I mean, we made the Oregon and Tennessee guys, tap out. I think it's because you get a big enough lead. They just realize that there's, I still got to protect my draft stock, and I'm we're down 30 points. There's nothing I can do at this point. So really, the best defense Ohio State can employ here is getting out early with an offensive explosion, because that just forces you into a passing game, and that's what I think is going to happen. I think we're going to have something figured out early on that is going to shut them down like we did to Oregon. I think Jeremiah Smith and everyone else is going to make a bunch of big plays because they're going to probably be stubborn early on doing some man defense, and that's not going to work. So I'm hoping that plan actually gets implemented and it's what Notre Dame does. And, I think that's just going to be a nice early lead. I think, towards the end, I think we're going to be trying to get a few extra scores to make it even look, because, I think a lot of times too, when you're down big, you sort of give up a little bit. And I think Ohio State's going to be so excited. They're going to pour in a couple extra touchdowns late. I think it's going to be, even though they have a great defense, I still think, they haven't played anyone other than USC with the passing game, and USC threw all over them. I'm thinking it's going to be a lot bigger than people think. I'm thinking it's actually going to get to the 40s. I think we're going to get something like 42-17.
42-17. Not buying all of this Notre Dame having a good defense.
No, I mean,
running game. Hey, there you go.
I think part of it's just the style. I think they're going to be stubborn and they're not going to play the proper defense, and it's going to cost them.
Yeah, awesome. All right, Brian.
I'm blaming the defensive coordinator, not the players. I know they have good players.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I've still got PTSD from when they've played really good defenses. They don't tend to score, at the level that we've seen them. On the high side, just the way that they're not a tempo offense. Ohio State is not. When you look at plays per game, they're not a high tempo offense. So they have to be extremely efficient and to put up over 40 points. And yeah, I could see there's a world where I see this being a blowout, because I do think that Notre Dame is the more one-dimensional team that has to rely on the run game. But I just don't see it going over. So I think with the over-unders like 45, I mean, I do tend to think that 17 is the number for Penn State. I mean, just that seems to be everybody's kind of number there, maybe even less. But I don't see how they can put up 24 points offensively against this defense. That's the key to it. And I think they can hold Ohio State. I think there's going to be times when Ohio State looks pretty pedestrian offensively, because we've seen it against Penn State. We've seen it against Michigan. We've seen it against Texas. And if you can make them grind drives, they will make mistakes. So I would go something like 27-17. I mean, I keep thinking it's in that range, or 24-13, that kind of a game. But if you said like, what's the outcome I absolutely cannot see happening, that would be Notre Dame blowing out Ohio State. What's the one that could very well happen? Ohio State blowing out Notre Dame. Like, this could be a game like the Washington game where it's over in the second quarter because Ohio State put 2 or 3 scores up and got 2 or 3 stops. They do that, this game is done. But if Notre Dame can keep it close, and I do think that we're in that era where defense can keep you in a game. And Ohio State has shown, to Matt's point earlier on, even in these big games, they did let Tennessee and Oregon kind of back in it in the middle 8. So I mean, it sounds corny, but I'm kind of looking at who wins the coin toss. Because if Notre Dame can defer, that helps Notre Dame. If they can keep that first half close and do something early in the second half, now they've got the belief that they can hang with you and then they can play. If you can take that belief away early, it could be an absolute blowout. But I just think, based on what we've seen to this point, the how sound Notre Dame plays, and they've got a lot of talent. I think I'm going to go, like I said, I would say something like 27-17 Ohio State. I do think Ohio State wins.
27-17. Yeah, that's slightly different. Matt, what was yours? Was it 35-17?
42.
42-17. Okay. So it sounds like between your two picks, Matt, you don't think Notre Dame is going to survive even the first half based on that score. And Brian, you're thinking Notre Dame probably does survive the half and maybe Ohio State pulls away later on. Am I reading into that right?
Yeah, I mean, I just think at the end of the day, when you look at the weirdness of how Notre Dame beat Georgia and Penn State, can you keep that level of luck going where your opponent makes those kind of mistakes that that basically keeps you in the game? I mean, yes, Ohio State could do that, but like I said, just when you look at the way that Notre Dame, everything has to go almost perfectly for Notre Dame in my mind to win that game. They have to keep it a low scoring game. They have to be able to, find some points, get over 24 against the best defense in the country that shut everybody's rushing attack down. And you're not really a balanced team. You are absolutely, your success offensively is predicated on running the football. You got a banged up tailback. You got a first time starting left tackle, a nicked up offensive guard, and you need luck. And to me, if you look at Ohio State doesn't have to play a perfect game. They just have to play well. They play well, they should win. A lot like the Texas game. They didn't play particularly great. They played good in spots, and their explosiveness in key points is what won that game. But if you look at what Notre Dame got an explosive touchdown because the corner fell down. Yes, you could. I'd still take the approach of go throw the ball down the field, go after Denzel Burke. He's got a bad shoulder and he's never been good defending deep balls. Davison Igbinosun's done a much better job not getting penalties, but I still think he's due for a PI. I would still be attacking these corners. You can't just not throw the ball downfield and expect to have success. But at the end of the day, I just don't know how anybody runs with consistency against this Ohio State defense. I think the defense, like Jim Knowles said after the Michigan game, they're ready to take this team to a championship, and it's going to be on the strength of the defense.
Yeah. Also, in my prediction, I'm predicting 2 defensive scores towards the end of the game.
There you go.
That's one of the ways it's going to get out of control because we're going to have a big lead, and they're not a good passing team. So I think we're going to have some big defensive scores or near scores in the second half.
Well, so I've picked Ohio State in every playoff game so far. I think I even picked them against Tennessee when a lot of people were picking Tennessee for some reason, but I'm almost looking at this as just from the Michigan lens. Is who do I even root for in this game? Because I'm looking for a good game. Because really, honestly, Notre Dame versus Ohio State, these are the teams I hate the most. I mean, the most visceral hate probably goes to Notre Dame. The most respectful hate goes to Ohio State. But I don't have the hate
why
that I used to have.
Why do you hate Notre Dame more than Ohio State?
I don't hate them more. I just hate them like they irk me more than Ohio State. I don't know if that makes sense.
Why?
Because I think it's from the Brian Kelly days.
Oh, well, yeah. Everyone hated Brian Kelly. What's there to hate now? They seem like a perfectly respectful, nice team with a really nice coach. They're like everyone likes Notre Dame now.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. Marcus Freeman's changed things a little for me.
Yeah.
I don't hate them the same way as I hated them before. I mean, when we play Notre Dame, Michigan does. We wear Rudy Sucks shirts in maize and blue. I mean, that's what you do. Michigan, that's Michigan's second or third biggest rivalry, maybe probably third based off Michigan State. But I think I'm probably going to be pulling for Notre Dame in this game. Trying to picture the game playing and who I'm going to be rooting for, and it's probably Notre Dame. I'm not going to be able to help it. And I kind of think Notre Dame's going to win this game too. I think it's very possible. Like even what you were saying, Brian, is about making it ugly and being able to run the ball with their running quarterback. I think Ohio State is a little bit sounding like they might be the Miami Hurricanes of 2002 when they completely overlooked Ohio State because of their,
there's a game
basic
plan out there to
offense
do this.
the punt, the punt is the best play in the game. I mean, it just feels a lot like even with
He's a
Ohio
trustful
State
guy.
players are picturing.
I was just going to
we
say,
already won.
If you look at Freeman, the way he coaches, he's a trustful guy.
Yeah.
And so you can see that that's the kind of way that they play. Don't beat yourself. Be sound in special teams. Control the ball, control the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. Be aggressive on defense. And there is a formula, I think, to at least maybe not beat Ohio State on a consistent basis, but at least challenge them. And that is, that's the deal. Like you have to limit the explosives. You have to make them earn drives. You have to make them earn it in the red zone. And that's I hate to call it that, but that's the Michigan formula, and keep it close late, and be the better team on special teams, and you got a shot to beat them. And
well,
that's
I think the Michigan formula is having 2 first-round picks at defensive tackle. Also, no one has any part close to that. Like they just wrecked everything in the middle.
Yeah, but that's not the only reason that they beat them. I mean, that's yeah. I mean, it's the same deal. It's like, and you look at the self-inflicted wounds again, where Howard has 2 horrible interceptions. But to me, like every year that they play Michigan, in the last, especially the last handful of years, it's really a red zone game. And Ohio State's inability to execute consistently in the red zone has been the biggest reason why they haven't sealed the deal in those games. And, they've done a really decent job, especially in like the Texas game. They did an excellent job when they had the red zone opportunities. And that's one of those things where, again, I think if they can, there's a formula out there. It's not that it's not that you can't envision in any way possible an upset here, but it would be a big upset. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And I think the lesson I do have said consistently since the Michigan game about Ohio State, why they're more dangerous now, is I think they will come out guns blazing. I don't think they're going to go out with a conservative game plan. I think they're going to push the ball. They're going to challenge Notre Dame, and Notre Dame's going to challenge them. And that's what's going to be fun about this. Like, I don't know that the game is necessarily going to be a close game, but I guarantee like the game within the game is going to be a hell of a lot of fun, because there's no way that you aren't going to get both these teams' best shot.
Yeah, that's so true. I'm going 27-24. Notre Dame beats Ohio State.
27?
But I don't feel good about that.
Hey, that's crazy.
That's a heart pick.
We've only had like one team score more than 20 points all year, and that's Oregon both times.
Oregon twice, yeah. But and the second time was only 21. Yeah. I mean, their defense is this. I think we're going to be looking back and say, like, I don't know, the outside of Caleb Downs, who I think is going to go on to have probably a Hall of Fame career in the NFL. He's that good. I don't know that you're going to see the high-end talent that they've had at other times, but collectively, this group is lights out, man. And you want to watch somebody who's fun as hell to play, who's playing at an extremely high level and not enough people to talk about. Tyleik Williams is tossing people. Tossing people.
He was tossing the first-round tackle like he was a ragdoll. Dude, I mean,
the way that they're playing on the D-line, Jordan Hancock moving to a safety position has been outstanding. Like they're really good. It's fun to watch them. And Notre Dame has NFL talent on their defense particularly as well. I mean, you're going to see some very, very high level defense played in this game. You really are. You're going to have some awesome talent.
I like games like that.
Who do you think are the weakest links on our entire defense? Like, I would think it would have to be Sonny Styles and Burke.
No, I mean the corners. I think in general, and they've played a lot better. But I think Burke and Igbinosun, Matthews had a bad PI. I think the corners and they're really good. It's not that they're not good. It's just, if I'm looking at that team, I think the way that they've changed the structure with Downs playing that kind of rover, almost middle linebacker when the 3 safety alignment, it's really allowed the linebackers to play free. And you're going to give up plays, man. That's the thing. Like, you're going to get caught in bad calls. You're going to, teams at this level are going to make plays on you, but they're not making them consistently. And so that's the thing, especially with the, downfield. With all the teams so far this year, not only in the playoffs this year, not only has Ohio State limited the running attacks, but they haven't really been hit deep on any passing.
I was very surprised that we were able to shut down the deep passing game of Oregon. I mean, they're not normally a deep passing
Texas.
team. Yeah, but I mean, I just really thought that Oregon was going to be able to get a lot more hits, after watching Denzel give up 180 yards and a couple touchdowns the first game and didn't give up.
I mean, but look at the pressure we're getting on the quarterback too.
Yeah.
Look at the pressure
Well,
we're getting on the
hope
quarterback
16,
right now.
16 sacks in 3 games will do that.
Oh my God. And that's what I say. I mean, you get Riley Leonard sped up in this game. He threw 2 bad interceptions against Penn State. That Penn State, again, I don't understand how you can get 2 interceptions, run for 200 yards, and lose that game. It's crazy. If they get competent quarterback play, and Howard is playing high level. And, was it Emmanuel Acho saying that he was the worst of the 4 quarterbacks in the semifinals is hilarious now. Because he's going to be laughing come Monday night when he's hoisting that trophy. He's the best quarterback of the 4. He is.
Yeah, that's true. All right, guys, I got to jump. Great talking to you. Looking forward to this game a lot. Thanks to everyone in the chat. Thanks to everyone who's watching. Definitely want to say a big go blue, but my gosh, I don't want that to mean it's for Notre Dame. So anyway, take it easy, guys. Give me one of those things you guys do, like with this, where you prove you can spell all the time. Ohio State fans. All right, take it easy, guys.
I-O. And there's no way